Welcome back to the Chad Hasty Show on News Talk 95.1 FM and 790 AM KFYO. Well, it's a busy week in Washington, D.C., and it's only Wednesday. And joining me on the phones right now, the senior senator from the great state of Texas. It's always a pleasure to visit with U.S. Senator John Cornyn. Senator Cornyn, good morning. How are you today?
Good morning, Chad. It's been a busy week, and as you point, it's just hump day.
Yeah.
And, but President gave a incredibly good speech, positive, uplifting speech. Speaker Pelosi clearly was not a happy camper. And today we'll vote at 4 o'clock Eastern time on the impeachment verdict.
Let's start off with the State of the Union address and get into some details there. I thought it was probably one of the best speeches that I have heard, definitely one of the best speeches I've heard President Trump give, and maybe one of the best speeches that I've heard during a State of the Union, because there were unifying parts, although the Democrats didn't always act like it, but there were also the divisions of here's where we stand, here's where conservatives stand on the issues, and here's where some other people in the chamber stand on the issues. Talk about that dynamic and how that played out inside the chamber last night.
Well, President Trump is a guy who made promises to the American people, and he's kept his promises. That's very important to him, and he's been scrupulous about doing that, and he's produced very good results. All we have to do is look at our 401k or retirement savings, and you can see that people are better off than they were just 3 years ago. I think clearly the Democratic Party has become so radical and has fallen so far out of the mainstream that they're doing everything they can to reelect the president. But in the meantime, the president, I think, has taken the high road of talking about what's good about America and what he wants to do when reelected. And I think that positive message that you said, given this great speech, is uplifting. And frankly, the kind of negativity that you see out of Speaker Pelosi, particularly throwing a temper tantrum last night, is not particularly attractive. I mean, does that make you want to go vote for a Democrat or not? So I think it's quite a contrast.
When she is sitting behind the president and she's it looks like she's mouthing things or she's giving death stares to her caucus, or what's going on, and is it easy for you to see what she's doing from your vantage point?
Yeah, of course the viewer could see her and the vice president right behind President Trump, but I was sitting off to the left side on one of the front rows, and she was looking through all of the pages of the speech. She wouldn't really look at the president. She wouldn't look up. She wouldn't react. And it was very peculiar. Like you said, it looked like she was reading the speech to herself and instead of listening to the president, who was standing right in front of her, giving the speech.
What was the reaction? Obviously, it doesn't sound like you were too thrilled with her reaction when she ripped the speech up. But what was the reaction just from everybody else once word got out that she was ripping apart the speech from the president?
Well, I think there was you could have heard a collective groan go out. At some point, we have to put this partisan bitterness behind us. And, of course, President Trump has endured 3 years of relentless investigations. The effort to begin impeaching him started the day he was sworn in. And we've been through all of this these investigations about the Russian involvement in the election. We've been through the Mueller report. All of this has ended up with a big nothing burger for the president's critics, and now impeachment is the ultimate thermonuclear weapon in our democracy to deny the American people their choice in the last election and to interfere in the 2020 election. I don't know whether most people know, Chad, that part of impeachment involves a vote on whether to disqualify the president from future races on the ballot. That is part of impeachment, and that is how dramatic what we've been asked to consider is.
Let's move on to impeachment today. I don't know if there will be anything too shocking. I think what everybody may be watching, Senator, is how many Democrats may vote to acquit the president. Tell us about the timeline of events today and when this vote will happen and what you will actually be looking for.
Well, the vote will occur about 4 p.m. Eastern time, so that'll be 3 p.m. our time back home. And, what we saw in the House is a partisan impeachment for the first time in American history, and literally a bipartisan opposition to the articles of impeachment. In the Senate, I think clearly the president will be acquitted. There's a 67-vote threshold. But as you point out, the interesting part is going to be to see what Joe Manchin of West Virginia does, a place where President Trump is pretty popular. Doug Jones, the senator from Alabama, where Trump is very popular as well, and Kristen Sinema from Arizona, who values her bipartisan credentials. So I predict he'll get at least one of those three Democrats, and so instead of a partisan impeachment and conviction, I think you'll have a bipartisan acquittal.
What does that mean for the Democrats? And I think this adds to Nancy Pelosi's, how she acted last night. I think she's frustrated. I think the Democrats are frustrated by this president and by the Republicans. Is this just adding in what happened in Iowa or in what's still going on in Iowa? Is this just a bad week and maybe a bad beginning of the year for the Democrats?
Oh, Nancy Pelosi is clearly not a happy camper. But my view, Chad, is she should have taken her own advice last March when she said that impeachment was just simply too divisive, and unless the evidence was overwhelming and compelling and the impeachment was bipartisan, we shouldn't go down that road. I think that's pretty much a paraphrase of what she said.
Yeah.
But then she got stampeded by the radicals in her own caucus, and in order to keep her hand on, stay in power, she had to cave in to them, and now I think she's realizing what a bad idea that was. And really, I think they're looking at not only a failed impeachment and removal of the president, but they're actually seeing the president's prospects improve. And while people are turned off by what they see coming out of the Democratic Party, I think that's the reason she is not very happy.
Visiting with U.S. Senator John Cornyn here on the Chad Hasty Show. Take us inside a little bit if you can. I'm sure there's been at least a little bit of discussion about the Iowa caucuses and the results of the Iowa caucuses and the fact that Joe Biden just didn't do very well in Iowa. What's been the reaction from some of your colleagues, and what are people thinking this race is looking like on the Democrat side right now?
Well, the first reaction, Chad, is these are the people who want to run the country, and they can't even run a caucus. This is not the state. This is a Secretary of State or official election officials. This is the Democratic Party itself, and it looks like they want to run your health care. They want to run the government. They want to tell you what to do with your life, but they can't even run a caucus. But what's interesting to me as well is the fact that the turnout actually was much lower than predicted. And it's kind of peculiar because it requires people to actually show up at a location and then support their chosen candidate. But Iowa certainly values its first in the nation indication of who's likely to be the Democratic nominee. But it looks to me like Joe Biden is slipping. I think actually Nancy Pelosi helped guarantee that inadvertently by making sure that this impeachment trial went forward at a time in the run-up to the Iowa caucuses. And so Joe's conflict of interest with his son Hunter earning millions of dollars on the board of a corrupt Ukrainian energy company, Burisma, that came back into the public view, and I don't think that helped him at all.
Senator, before I let you go, one of your colleagues, Senator Lindsey Graham, has said that he's in favor of not dropping this issue. Once the acquittal is done, that he wants to press forward and continue to look into Burisma, continue to look into the Hunter Biden and former Vice President Joe Biden issue and see if there was any corruption there. Do you support that idea?
Well, Chad, there's definitely a double standard between Democrats and Republicans, and Joe Biden, what Joe Biden did, and his conflict of interest in his son capitalizing on the family name while he was vice president clearly was a conflict of interest. At some point, we got to get on with the rest of the nation's business. There's two things that are high on my agenda, and I think we can actually get them done this year. One has to do with reducing prescription drug costs. I've got a couple of bills that came out of the Judiciary Committee that are ripe for passage that will help consumers save money. And then we also need to pass a highway infrastructure bill, something that is genuinely bipartisan. In a state like Texas, where we're growing so fast, we simply need to keep up with our roads and bridges for reasons of the economy, for public safety, and for environmental reasons. So those are two things I'd prefer to spend time on rather than continuing these investigations. But Chairman Graham is the chairman of the committee. I'm on the Judiciary Committee. I'll certainly join him in looking into whatever he thinks deserves our scrutiny.
So you're open to it. You'd rather do some other things first.
I would rather spend most of my time trying to figure ways we can make life a little bit better for Texans and for Americans, rather than sort of continue to engage in these endless investigations. That's all we've had out of the Democrats for the last 3 years, and this is where we've ended up. And I think my sense is that the folks that I talk to back home, they'd like to get our work done.
Yeah. Visiting with U.S. Senator John Cornyn. Appreciate your time as always. I will say this, Senator, by the looks of Nancy Pelosi last night, it doesn't seem like she's on board with anything getting done this year. But good luck.
She had a real snit.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yes, she
Thanks,
did.
Chad.
Senator, I appreciate your time. Have a great one.
Take care. You too.
That's U.S. Senator John Cornyn here on the Chad Hasty Show. News Talk, KFYO.